I'm here with To'osavili Nigel Bickle, who's CEO of Hastings District Council. Kia ora, Nigel, and thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, kia ora, Andrew. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Your job has undoubtedly changed a bit thanks to Cyclone Gabrielle. Could you give us an overview of the devastation in Hastings District?
Yeah, look, it has been devastation, and it's the scale of it and how pervasive it is that's quite confronting. And so just want to aroha mai to the community and acknowledge right up front the loss of lives, the sort of nearly 1,000 homes that have been severely damaged in communities from Eastdale to Puketapu to Mahu, Waiheke, Pakowhai, some localised issues in Havelock North. So, we've seen a scale of destruction associated with the cyclone, largely a story about where the water went. But at a high level, it sort of destroyed completely 8 bridges that we were responsible for, seriously damaged 12 bridges, hundreds of kilometres of roads. We've seen nearly 1,000 homes red and yellow stickered across the Hastings district. And then really confrontingly, we've seen a lot of productive parts of our economy in terms of a large number of orchards, vineyards, cropping and vegetables also destroyed. So it's been a pretty significant impact right across our community.
You've unpacked quite a bit there, and it covers infrastructure, housing, social needs. Where do you even begin to sort out priorities?
Yeah, so in the first phase, and we're still in, which has all been about response. The first focus was on critical infrastructure and on the community's welfare. So, the very early stages of the focus was on critical infrastructure, so getting underway pretty quickly with roads. So, over 100 road crews repairing roads, obviously getting on with putting in access and reconnecting communities. So, it's been pleasing to see that, we've kind of got the walking bridge in at Lower Dartmoor about to open the new Dartmoor Bridge. The Risington Bridge opens tomorrow, the 31st of March. In the early stage, we had community welfare centres set up, through Mid-Eyes, churches. We had at the peak 700 people that were living in community evacuation centres, getting fuel and supplies out to isolated rural communities and the Risingtons, Puketitris, Tuteras. Now, whilst it's changed over the 6 weeks, we still have a number of communities that are fairly isolated. So it's both ongoing response, but also starting to move into, well, what does recovery look like? And recovery is going to take a while as we look to support, sorting out infrastructure, housing, supporting our businesses.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Dartmoor and you mentioned Risington, which are coming back online, if you like. What other areas are still isolated?
So Tutera, it's been pleasing that we've been able to open up a little bit of access for stock movement. I mean, very early on in this, I suppose at a broad level, and I note that there's been some localised issues in some of our urban environment, but you can largely be in large parts of urban Hastings and Havelock North, and you wouldn't know there's been a cyclone. Yeah. It's happened on the sort of peri-urban, as we call it, the Pakowhais, the Puketapus, the Dartmoors, and into our rural communities, and it really was a story about where the rivers went. That's where the real significant issues are that we need to address.
Yeah. Because your district is quite weird because it sort of loops around Napier, almost Napier's a bit of an island. So there's a lot of area we're talking about.
Yeah, there is. So if we think about this wonderful thing we call Hawke's Bay, and obviously our biggest isolated community is Whitehall, because they've been severed completely from Hawke's Bay, and whilst they're our whānau, in a Hawke's Bay context, a lot of the practical support for Whitehall is being provided from the north through Tairāwhiti and Bay of Plenty, and that's just a function of the fact that State Highway 2 has been severed. Hastings district, that is by virtue a district that's 5,500 square kilometres, that is down to Te Hauki boundary road in the south that wraps around Napier and goes north and then into the rural hinterlands and the boundaries with Taupo. So Hastings is this very large district that have many of those communities that have been impacted.
So how many people are still displaced at the moment, and where are they?
Yeah, look, it's hard to know in terms of talking in facts. We have circa 700 yellow placard homes, nearly 100 red placard homes in the Hastings district, and most of the yellow placard homes, there's two categories of yellow, and yellow 2 are the most serious. So we know we've got a number of families that are staying with friends. Families aren't in those homes anymore, or through insurance arrangements are staying in Airbnbs or motels. So there's a level of displacement. Being absolute about where those people are now is very hard to comment on, other than the facts that we know, which are all of those buildings have been assessed, and we kind of know the state of the housing stock.
So red stickered and yellow stickered, do those mean they're never going to go back, or?
So red in effect means it's uninhabitable, and yellow is basically got a degree of damage in the yellow 2 category, which is you can only be in there partially or limited access. So I guess the point to make is for the hundreds of families that find themselves in that situation, I mean that's their lives, and but this isn't Christchurch in the sense of huge amounts of our overall built environment that's been damaged. It has been very much around a story of where those rivers went.
Yeah. So talking of Christchurch Red Zones, do you see that happening in Hastings, and what are likely to be those areas?
So again, I think we are in conversations with the government at the moment. I think the government have been very clear that one of the lessons learned out of Christchurch was that it took way too long for some of those decisions to be made around what were those high risk areas. And again, what we're saying to the community is, look, we're pulling together data, we're having a conversation with the government, we're trying to understand what is the time frame and the process for making those decisions, because what we're hearing consistently from communities is people are looking for certainty, but these will be very difficult decisions, because equally what we're hearing from our community is people that are already making choices of insurance payouts to say I'm not returning to these communities, through to others in the community saying I've been here for 5 generations and I don't care what colour sticker you put on my property, I'm not leaving the land. So you're going to have that full range of emotions tied up with this, but the process at the moment is just gathering factual information, talking with the government and trying to get clarity around what the timeframes and the process is going to be, including how do communities have their say in decisions that need to be made. Yeah,
because speaking with the Hastings Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst a while back, her theme is Build Back Better, and a lot of, you spoke about the bridges and things like that you've got, and Rissington was what, a 1 in 500 year, and then it got smashed. And also talking about the cables with power and everything running telecommunications under the bridges. How do you change that? I mean, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, look, I think as Mayor Sandra said, the mantra is, if you view that there's going to be a lot of money spent in Hawke's Bay across insurance, private sector, government, both local and central government, it's how do we make sure that at the end of this we have built back better, and what we think that looks like is recognising that this investment should deal with some of the equity issues that we have in our community. It should result in more fit for purpose and resilient infrastructure. Resilient lifelines infrastructure. I don't think any of us thought for a moment in January that we might deal with natural disaster and try to manage that natural disaster with no power, no telecommunications, every connection between Hastings, Napier and Whitehall severed by bridges and roads. And it's highlighted that a lot of our infrastructure isn't that resilient. And now, whilst some of these decisions have been taken over different contexts, and some of them a very long time ago, the questions that we should be at least honest enough to ask around, well, is it sensible having the power supply for 60-something thousand people in Napier sitting next to a river in the middle of a floodplain? Now, there's no easy answers here, but they're the questions that we need to be asking. Now, that decision was taken in 1929, but what we know in 2023, do we think that's sensible? Because we've seen what happens when the power goes out.
That's the Redcliffe
That's the Redcliffe
yeah.
substation.
Yeah.
Some of the questions about, because if we stand back and look at the, and this is difficult, Andrew, like if we look at the whakapapa of Hawke's Bay, well, we know what it was in 150-something years ago. It is the most alluvial soil, some of the most alluvial soil in the world because of centuries of flooding and the depositing of silt that's turned into soils. We have over the last 150 years created an economy off those soils through a drainage and a flood protection scheme, but we live largely on the plains in a braided river system that we diverted and changed over the last 150 years. So there is a level of risk living here, and it's how we collectively make some of those judgments around how do you best manage some of those risks, but accepting that there's a degree of risk around where we live. So we don't have answers to that at this stage, but I think that there's part of this recovery process that's in front of us is how do we are we prepared to ask some of those questions?
Yeah. Now, we were talking earlier and you were saying about silt and rubbish. There are quite some figures there of how much silt's been removed in that.
Yeah, look, the huge early focus and what was really important for the community was clearing away flood damaged household effects. So again, I just recognise that for the communities affected, it probably feels like it hasn't happened, fast enough. But we've had circa 300 trucks a day operating for weeks, picking up flood damaged waste, dealing with almost 400 tonnes a day of waste that we've built, a new location on Chester Hope off Franklin Road, where we've been taking hundreds of trucks of rubbish a day, shredding it all, compacting it down before we transfer it to the Omranui landfill. We're probably 70 to 80% through flood damaged waste, but what we've learned from other areas, whether it's Christchurch or Bulla or Kaikoura or Auckland that had Cyclone Hale before we had Cyclone Gabriel, was that these things tend to take a couple of months and 5 or 6 goes around the community before you clear that. So we're a long way through the household waste, but silt is the really big challenge, just how much of it is there is, and what we do with it, where we store it, where it ends up going long term are the things that we're still working through today.
Where would it go short term?
So short term we have sort of 5 sites that we are taking silt to. We've tried to find locations that are basically close by to where the silt is, because the last thing you're wanting to be doing is putting silt on trucks and putting those trucks on expressways and transport routes when we've had some challenges around sort of transport. So at the moment Hastings have about 5 different silt sites that we're transporting silt to.
Now, one thing we hear at these community meetings, and it's all levels of government communications, and some people are frustrated at a perceived lack of communication. Are you comfortable and confident that your council's communications was on target and that you got the message out there?
Look, what I'm confident is we've tried our best. There will always be room to do that better, and I think we kind of acknowledge that. I think one of the things that's been important to us is trying to front up, be in the community, coming to community meetings, trying to use every means possible to communicate, whilst acknowledging just early on. And feels like a lifetime ago, but it's not that many weeks ago where, we didn't have a lot of power, where telecommunications were quite patchy, where people that had previous lived were, staying with friends and family. There's been a few challenges in communicating, but I don't want to make that sound like, excuses. But yeah, no, everyone wants to, feel like that they've got the right, information, and people are looking for certainty around things that they can get on with their lives.
And you're working together with other councils, and then you've got Kiriana Brookin, who's the interim recovery manager for the recovery agency, and there will be a permanent manager and a board, and that's set up. Are you confident that's all working well, and you're happy with that structure?
Yeah, again, the proof will be in the pudding, Andrew, ultimately around how we recover. But the things that I've spent a fair bit of my time over the last 4 weeks doing is supporting the recovery work, and it's great that we've got Kiriana in as an interim recovery manager. I think that the things that I'm heartened by is the government saying, look, we learnt lessons out of Christchurch, and we're not going to have something like Sarah. It's not going to be a government department that does the recovery for Hawke's Bay. That recovery is fundamentally led at a local level, and we will have a coordinated Hawke's Bay response that government will support. In really practical terms, the things that have been, I think, important that we did very early on was we brought our farming, agricultural farming sector together. We brought our primary sector leaders in hort and viticulture and summer fruit and vegetables together to meet with the Prime Minister and ministers to hear firsthand from those, those sectors around, what are the big issues. Now that was a month ago, and from the farming sector, it was like only one thing we want you to focus on in the short term, and that's sort out access, sort out roads and bridges. For the farming community, a lot of it was about our ability to plan our farms, and particularly animal welfare heading into winter is all about being able to get our stock off the farms. For the hort and vit sector, it was about the big issues that they're facing, which is, this happened at not a great time in the cycle where we're at the front of harvest, some big impacts on revenue, some big impacts around how they clean up their orchards and then re-establish their orchards. So, really important to be, working with different parts of our communities so we actually understand what's most important to them and then get the work underway that's going to support their recovery. We've been doing a lot of work with across Hawke's Bay and with the government agencies on coming up with the housing investment plan, because we had some challenges here with housing on the 13th of February, and the 14th of February just made that that a little bit more challenging. So, really important to be getting, the work underway that goes to how our communities and as a region we will, recover. And some of that's about getting, that critical work underway, getting decisions, and getting on with things that we know are going to be really important across, in the broad areas. It's infrastructure, housing, it's our business community, it's about the sort of welfare and health and psychosocial services and the things that support families and, communities are kind of the big sort of pillars of recovery that we're trying to focus the work on.
And obviously bringing expertise in as well. And I see former Mayor Lawrence Sewell, is he acting on a consultancy basis for you?
Yeah. So again, it's been bring all of the skills and passion in. So as you know, Lawrence is a former mayor of Hastings and a former MP, but somebody that's deeply connected into the farming and primary sectors. So Lawrence has been helping us with some of the work in the in the farming space. So it's all hands to the pump basically.
Now you say money's coming from central government. There's a mayoral fund. There's insurance. All of this is costing money. All the rebuild and that. What can ratepayers expect? How much are they going to be hit with this? The costs are significant. So I think I sort of said in a few weeks into this at a council meeting off a report I made to council that we were spending $1 million a day across various response activities. Obviously, things. Organising contractors and 300 trucks picking up rubbish every day and machinery that's crushing it and taking it to the tip. Some of the costs are significant. If you look at in the roading area, we are forecasting to spend $60 million by the 30th of June. So in 4 months we will have spent $60 million on the roading network. Now we know we'll get 93% of that back through a Waka Kotahi subsidy. But 7% of $60 million is still a lot for the ratepayer. Yeah. There is going to be some costs. I suppose from my perspective, the mantra from Mayor Sandra is get on and do the right things for our community. We will get a bunch of these costs back through NEMA, through things like subsidies. But, if we focus, make that all the focus at the front end, well, we just won't get on and do things that our community needs. So we've got, obviously we've got headroom in terms of our overall fiscal position, but some of these costs will be borne by the community over many years to come. But the focus has been going, we exist to do the right thing by way of what our community needs and get on and do that. Because your annual plan will change because of this, and obviously the projection of rates increase will also change. Yeah,
look, I think right now, there'll be decisions to take by council, but to be clear, I mean, we had, we had a long-term plan that was adopted, and I think right now, there are so many things that we don't know, so I don't think we will be looking to run hugely different numbers than what we said we had, and being honest with the community that says, look, as we know more and choices need to be made, we'll have to talk to the community. Yeah. But right now, we don't, we don't know the full, sort of extent of the cost, but that will be a conversation at some point with the community, but it won't be, in the next month or two. Yeah.
Because people are having a tough now cost of living as well, so you're obviously aware of that, and
very aware of that. Yeah. And so the year 3 of the long-term plan, which is the 12 months that we're heading into from the 1st of July, the the LTP had that rates increase at 5.7% plus CPI. So I'd imagine it's going to be something, in that order. But that's for a council decision in the next month or so. But yeah, I think we're all attuned to the cost of living and the level of inflation, there's become the challenging things, because a lot of the things that we deliver on behalf of the community have the same things that households are facing. So if you take things like a weekly refuge and recycling contract that's delivered by the council on behalf of the community, the two biggest input costs are labour costs and fuel costs, and we know, and that's just the reality at whether it's an individual or a household or a community or at a country level. One of the issues that have been playing out over the last 18 months is we've seen record levels of inflationary pressure.
Yeah. Just two more questions. One, what has personally shocked you about the cyclone?
Oh, just it's the devastation and the story of where the water went and where it didn't. And so, I said to the staff, I'm a pretty resilient character, but was the second week of the event, and everyone been working long hours. I got home on a Friday night, and it was the first time I'd got home at an early hour, and I got home about 7 o'clock, and my wife had made me a lovely dinner, and I was sitting down to watch the first round of Super Rugby, and the power went out, and I thought, And I said to my wife, I said, look, I'm not going to sit in the house. Actually, one of the staff had, built this new tip down in Chester Hope during the week. So I thought, I'm just going to get down there while it's still light. And I got in the car and I drove down Pakowhai Road, and it was the first time I'd driven down Pakowhai Road since the cyclone, and it was starting to get dark. The power was out in Hastings. It was starting to rain, and then you hit Pakowhai Road as you drove towards Chester Hope, and it just struck me as you saw the USAR spray paint on just about every building, the silt, the rubbish, the crops dying, the absolute destruction. I just started to have a cry, and I thought, boy, first and foremost for all of those people, it was their homes and business, but just then also that sense of the kind of scale of the devastation, and then you kind of say, well, look, yeah, it's okay to feel that, like we're all humans and we're all going to go through cycles of, but it is really, I suppose, that overwhelming thing about the power of water and Mother Nature, and that really as you look at. You could drive around parts of Hastings today and it looks like a normal day as it did on the 13th of February. Yet you can drive through Pakowhai or over the bridge at Fernhill and into Oahu or out to Waiheke or down Links Road, and really just the scale of destruction. And then of course, Esk Valley, some of the rural communities that I haven't even been into yet, the Risingtons, the Tuteras, and you just say, boy, this is, for the communities and the individuals that it's affected, it's just, it's hard to comprehend. Yeah. And then you say, right, no, we've got to stay focused on the how do we support our communities, but how do we also believe that we can build back better, but know that it's going to take some time, and there are going to be some big challenges in front of us as a community as the impacts of this event play out.
Yeah. And were you personally affected?
No, I'm one of the fortunate ones that, as I say, I live in Hastings Central, and, the extent of it for me was a day without power, and personally wasn't affected. So I feel very lucky in that regard. Try not to have the sort of, survivor's guilt when you think about what's happened for other folks. But yeah.
And the region can recover, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the fundamentals of Hawke's Bay, that we are, a beautiful part of New Zealand with a solid base to what we do here, which is, grow world-class food, and wine. Is believe we can, we can recover and we can be better at the end of it. It's just going to be, we're going to need collectively to be really, really good as a region to do this, and really encouraged with the way that we've come together as Hawke's Bay. But yeah, fundamentally believe that, because that's what we've got to hold on to.
To'osavili Nigel Bickle, thank you for your time and all the best for the future.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.